Hey everyone, in today's video, I'll be covering the safest routes I know for the village in Road to Vostok. With over 150 hours of trial and error in the game, I have definitely learned that not all routes are built the same, and some are definitely better than others. The following two routes have been the best ones I've found for quick loot and lower conflicts. Each route takes about 15 minutes or less to complete. They're both really similar to each other, it just depends on which way you want to start the loop. And it might also depend what shelter you choose as your primary shelter. I use the attic as my primary shelter, so I usually go with Route A. Feel free to modify any of the routes as you see fit, as we may have different play styles, or sometimes it's just easier to take a path that's not set in stone. And I'll be giving finer detail about the routes on the back half of the video. Now, let's head over to the map. Okay, so why loop the village? I loop the village for all of these following reasons. Even in later stages of the game, other maps don't have as much food and drink resources as the village does, or at least easy ones. So I regularly come back to the village to farm those before I spend longer times in outposts, the minefield, or even going to Vostok. The village also has a lot of easy ammo and weapons. They might not be the best, but for example, some of my main weapons are PM5 and an RK95, so I can get easy ammo from this area and easy weapon replacements at times. If not, later in the game, once you do those tasks for the generalist, the taxes are dropped so far that it's easy to trade what you get on this route so that you can just buy food or ammo from the generalist instead. And for the occasional rare items, I have definitely found 3 guitars in this area, a few coffee masters, and an oil filter right outside of the generalist spot. So those do drop in this area. And I think all of these points are really important, especially for beginners. I put the combat and clearing practice at the bottom there because what helped me get more familiar with the game mechanics and how some of the enemies operate is to do repetitive clearings on this map. Covering some key locations, first we'll go over the shelters. The cabin is located here, and the attic is over here. For the trader, the generalist is located right next to the attic in the lumberyard. And for locked buildings, we have the cellar, which you need a key to open. Level exits are the highway to the north and the school to the northeast. And I like to think of the map in different quadrants. So you got 1, 2, 3, and 4. For most frequent enemy areas, it's basically the entire map. The ones to note are the barn in the cellar fields. Those have ones outside, but all the other ones they're definitely near the inside or they patrol the outside of the houses. I did say these are my safest routes with lower conflict, not combat absent. And I do skip over a few areas during these routes. Either they're a little bit out of the way and I don't think it's worth it to loot them, or it's a very high chance I'm not going to be able to clear the house very well or a very high conflict area. I honestly think the 2-story white house in the middle of the map is the worst house to clear, and it hasn't really been worth it for me to clear. So for Route A, we start at the train tracks behind the lumberyard. We go up through the lumberyard into quadrant 1 and then start looting. We go around near the highway, down into quadrant 2, hit some tents into quadrant 3, go back to the railway, and then we end in the lumberyard. And it's really important to know that you don't start looting in the lumberyard. You start looting the houses in quadrant 1. So where I have that blip is actually the yellow house next to the lumberyard. In that way, you should be able to get almost a full bag by the time you get through that loop. And when you do, you don't have to go into any of your shelters to drop your items. You can go trade with the generalist. And then if you do have additional bag space after those trades, then you can just hit the lumberyard as needed. And for Route B, it's more of the same. It's just the opposite direction of Route A. We still start on the train tracks, but closer to the cabin. We go up to the yellow house in quadrant 3, to the tents, to the greenhouse, up into quadrant 2, around the highway, down through quadrant 1, and then we end up in the lumberyard in quadrant 4 again. For this route, there is no overlap, so the first area that you go to is the first area that you start looting. And again, when you get to the end of the route, you may want to just trade with the generalist first if your bag is full, then go back and loot the lumberyard through the containers to find whatever you can. And don't forget about the freebie containers in the generalist room. Now, let's head outside to the village and I'll give some finer details about the routes as I do example runs for both. And as we go through the example runs, please keep in mind I don't even follow my routes exactly. Everything does have a high degree of variability. So first, I hug the corner of the lumberyard to look out at the cellar field because there is typically a guy out there and we just want to provide ourselves cover as we dispatch them and then run through the lumberyard. I do stop ahead of this electrical box so that I can scan all the buildings in quadrant 1. And then I move on to this red shack next to the yellow to further scan for enemies. And then I do scan ahead at the houses in the quadrant. And then I take the red through the window and then use it as cover. I would loot it now, but this is abbreviated, so it's just for the dry run. We're gonna go through the yellow. I close the door behind me. And then I usually clear through the kitchen in that living room. I don't like that this door is open, but we're just gonna roll with it. And we've already kind of looked through the window, so unless they're tucked into that back corner, there shouldn't be any enemies. I would then loot this place, but we're gonna go out. I jump over the railing, and then I look through the windows of this red brick house before going through the door. I airlock myself in, and then take my time as I go through the rest of the house and clear room to room. I typically do the bathroom first, and then the kitchen. Sometimes there's a guy in the corner there, and sometimes there's a guy in the corner of that other room as well. If I do notice lights, I usually put them out even in the day. I don't know, that's just me. So we're going to the white house, to the tree house. I hug this corner to scan, and then I look out to the barn near the school because sometimes an enemy does spawn out there and shoot you. Then I jump and peek through the kitchen and then take the white house. I go to the big room first and then check the bathroom. Usually there's nobody in there. And then I usually go through the kitchen because we've already looked at it into this kind of living room area. I try to check if the front door is closed, and then I use the door as cover before I look into this bedroom. And then this is when I would just loot this house. But again, I'm leaving it just to show you the route. So I do go out the back and use the house as cover, and then I look. And the reason why we go for the electric box near the high school is sometimes we have an enemy engagement near this barn. We caught him off guard, so that's good. But that's the reason why I hook around this part near the highway entrance. Then we run to the electrical box. You can loot it if you want. And then we take this barn. I look to this opposite corner because there sometimes is an enemy in the hills. I'll just take his gun. And then we hook in and look through the windows to clear this barn. Then we use it as cover to look at the yellow. We go down, we use the tree as cover as well, and then I hop and look in. We see a guy in there this time, so We have a little bit of distance and we dispatch him through the window. I reload and I lock myself in. I don't like that that door is open, but we know that's clear. Behind us is clear because we looked in. I'm going to close the door here. And this kitchen should be clear because we also jumped and looked in. So there's this bathroom area. We'll use a door as cover, and then another little side room, and we do the same thing. I would loot it now, but for abbreviation, I'm going to run out. So I don't go directly to the green house in the red house because, like there, sometimes there is an enemy. That was closer than normal, but an enemy typically patrols over there or is in either the green or the red house. So that's why on my route, we are going to the tents instead, because we hook wide anyway, and that's just to give distance in case somebody is patrolling like that. So now that we have the high ground, we're looking into the greenhouse, and then we'll go in. There's another guy, and we're using the hill and the tree as cover as we go down the hill with the high ground. And I typically take the greenhouse first. I airlock myself in and clear this house. And again, I try to extinguish the lights where I can, even in the day. I try to use the doors as covers as much as I can, but, you know, I'm not perfect, and I just kind of do it sometimes. And then we go to these sheds, clear out these sheds. We use them as cover as we kind of wait and see if an enemy comes out. We kind of peek a couple times. And we really keep our eye on the White House while we clear the Red House from the outside. I've had better luck clearing it from the outside because these windows are huge and there's only 2 rooms in this house except for this foyer area. So if you were to get ambushed, it would be in this foyer area. So that's clear. I would loot all of that, but we're moving on. I use this van as cover. I really look at the yellow, and then I go for this little wooden shack to the side. I jump through the railing, and then I do take this blind corner. I do just go into the sauna area. Those doors were open, and I use these as cover. There's not really guys in there often. And I don't hear anything, so I go and take the yellow, and then I just clear this. Again, using the doors as cover as I kind of mantle around them. And we already kind of looked in the window for that kitchen, so it should be clear. I would then loot that and then run down. And that's pretty much the end of the route. Sometimes there is a guy near the cabin, so that's something to be mindful of. Other than that, we just go back to our starting position, which would be on these railroad tracks, or if you start near the attic, it would just be near your attic position. If your bag is not full, then you can go ahead and check the tents. But I also do look back out to the cellar field next to the lumberyard because enemies do tend to respawn out there as well. And then just tie things up. And this is where we would go back to the generalist and then loot the lumberyard. GG. For Route B, we start next to the tractor. It's still near the train tracks, and we go straight up the road toward the yellow. Since we're going the opposite way, we're doing this a little bit differently. And I'm going to look into the sauna through the window. Kind of check out the yellow, jump through the railing, and then look through the window in this other part of the sauna. Just double check, use it as cover, and then check the blind room. use it as a cover, look around, and then go for the yellow. And I do close all the doors behind me so nobody can sneak up on me as I'm clearing out these houses. I try to think of things as vacuums and do things just part by part. So I really compartmentalize all the stuff that I go into if it's a building. Again, we're using the doors as cover before we kind of go around it and try. I use the kitchen to look at the greenhouse and some of the surrounding areas. And then I run from the yellow, but I go wide to the green. I don't typically go to the van on this one. I go wide so that we go to the tents. And the whole time I strafe over and I watch the greenhouse or that little area behind where the red shack is so that I can see any enemies patrolling. So I would loot this, but I'm just going to continue since we're just doing the run. So again, we have the high ground just like Route A, and then I'm going down into the green, using the trees as cover as I need. I don't hear anybody, so I feel all right. Airlock myself in, and then clear the house. And you can see if any enemies are in the main rooms because you're using the windows to check if they're enemies. And if they do make noise, you'll be able to hear them as well. So from this, I go check this shed, clear these out. There's usually not guys in them most times. And then really watch the white house and then clear the red house from the outside. Just like we did in Route A. Check the foyer area. Looks good. I typically don't raise my gun there because you would probably hear the guy if you check the house like that. We hear a guy somewhere near that white house. I would probably loot that house anyway, and then we're going to go wide. So I don't go into the white house. We're going wide. And since I heard a guy, we're going into the rocks and going, instead of going straight from that red into the yellow. We have to be a little cautious here because we heard the enemy and they were right in this area. So this is probably the hardest house to go into out of this route. And we find an enemy here and I just hip fire him. I got a little lucky, but I also did have the door frame for some cover. Checking the bathroom in that other room. Got caught on the door a little bit. Checking the wider rooms. And this house is just far harder to lock down from that entryway. And then we're using the windows just to check. Gives us some cover and lets us check the rest of the area that we're going to go to. I'm scanning for enemies just because I heard a shot, but I'm not really concerned. It's a little bit further away. And it sounded like a Mosin. So I would loot that, running to the barn. And you can see directly into the barn, so it's fine. But we're using the back side of the barn, so we have cover. We're moving up, cover to cover, using trees where we can. And again, very important to go to the highway behind this box for extra cover. Not only are you giving distance to a road, you're going to get behind cover while giving yourself distance. I look at the school barn to check for enemies out there since I hear the shots, and then I see this guy out in the school barn field. After that guy's taken care of, we go ahead and go for this white house. I jump on the clothesline to look into this room. And then just kind of be mindful of that and then go through the front. I don't like going through the front, but you know, I did it this time. I close the door behind me and then I check the house. Check the bedroom first, using the door as cover. And then just checking this bathroom. I don't want to go out there because it's kind of a blind corner. So I go into kind of somewhere a little bit I think is safer. So I go into that living room area, into the kitchen. We close this door and then take the big room and look into the bathroom. I would loot that, but we're just gonna go out. I'm looking at the red house and I feel safer because I've already taken care of an enemy to my left in the field. I jump look into the garage and then I go through the garage into this little back room. Close the door behind me and then clear the house. A little more cautious here. It's a little bit harder to go that way in entry than the other way. Check the bathroom. Close that door while I peek into the kitchen. Check this room. And then I situationally think to look through the window. That way, if a guy is jammed right into that other corner, I would see him. This way, I don't have to turn that corner and get shot, or have a higher risk of getting shot. Then I would loot this, and then continue on. I kind of look around, and then run for the red shack before we go into the yellow. I cleared through the window. This one's pretty easy to clear through the window. And then I use this as cover. There's a couple freezers in here. I would also loot that. I look down at the lumberyard to see if there's any patrols and listen out for the yellow and then run into the yellow. I hear some shots from the lumberyard, so I just airlock myself in to the yellow and then clear it. You would likely hear an enemy come towards you, so I felt okay to just clear the rest of this house before engaging with that other enemy. I need to locate that enemy, so I take a look. I actually missed this guy. He was to my right, but we were kind of tucked back, so I had some cover. I get a couple shots on him. This house is clear. We're almost near the end of the route, so I go and kind of peek the corner outdoor, see if he'll come back. I give a couple seconds and then I kind of go look down, try to get a better view. Give myself cover behind the red house and then take the shot. And now, if there's not a double spawn, it should be good. And we can loot this house and finish off the route at the generalist and the lumberyard. Well, thanks for checking out the video, and feel free to leave a comment down below if you enjoyed the video or found it helpful. Also, feel free to let me know if you'd like to see more of these type of videos, or have ideas of other videos you'd like me to cover. And if you're interested in any of my streams, I stream 5 days a week on Twitch, so you can find me there. Thanks again, and see you in the next one.